In this video, I'm going to be removing the passenger door panel to try to understand why that door is not locking with the rest of the central locking system. In a recent shorts video, I highlighted an issue that I've been having with the passenger door on my Smart, where it isn't locking with the rest of the central locking system. Now this has primarily been a hot weather problem, and ironically the weather has now cooled down and it hasn't been happening. But I'm still going to take the door panel off because A, it'll be a great video for those curious about how to get the door panels off these cars, and B, there are some things I want to look at on the lock itself to see if I can actually resolve this issue or if I need to replace the component. A few things to consider here. First of all, this whole operation is better with the window down. This mirror and the associated trim components inside will need to be removed. This seal will need to pull out, and this door handle will need to be removed before the door panel itself can finally be removed from the car. To get started, we've got a couple of Torx T20s, one here and one just on the inside. This pulls off, and then we need to separate this these series of cables here, which are the mirror adjuster cables. There's a little tiny clip here which we lift. Which separates this mechanism from the trim. Next we've got a couple more here. We've got a T20. This enables this piece to be removed, which exposes the remaining screws that hold the mirror onto the vehicle, these T20s here. Once these two remaining screws are removed, the mirror is free to leave the vehicle and be stored somewhere safe so a clumsy creature like me doesn't break it. We now turn our attention to this handle. This little lock barrel lives under this cover, and it's really important that this is released before we attempt to remove this door handle on this side. This next step would not apply on the side that doesn't have the lock barrel. Just down from the two fixing bolts for the handle is this little clip right here. It's like a little plastic rivet. This needs to come out. Like many of these kind of clips on these cars, it is just a case of pushing in the insert in the middle and then easing this out. It's very tight, despite driving out the middle clip. I'm hoping I don't have to destroy this to get this out. It's free. I'll definitely be needing a new one of those. There is a T10 in here that needs to be unscrewed and removed. Next I remove these two T27 bolts that secure the door handle onto the car. The door handle just pulls back and away. It's worth bearing in mind at this point that there are some connections to this, which you can see right here. These are the cables. These cables are fairly easy to release because they just unclip. And then you just remove the cable like that. So connection to the door lock barrel for emergency access, and then the cable connection here for the actual door handle itself. You can't get them the wrong way around because the actual little nipple on the end is of a different size. It's now time to remove this weather strip. It's extremely grimy underneath. This is not very nice. As you can see, that will be getting a thorough clean before that goes back on the car. Next we remove this T25 right here. Everything is now unbolted and unclipped, so it really is now just a case of removing this panel. Now it's just worth having a look in here just to be aware of the location of various clips and tabs before moving on to the next step so these don't get broken in any way. These clips simply pull clear of the metal bar inside. These ones, if you can see them in there, these ones actually slot forwards. You'll understand more when I remove it. And again, the one in there, they're in slots. Once they slot forward, they can be removed. So we slide this whole panel forward. And that exposes the inner mechanisms. And just to give some clarity on how these clips engage and why we had to pull the panel forward, when we refit, we'll be pushing the clip in here and then across, which locks it into position in this area here. So there are 3 of those. So it starts here, we slide it forwards, it releases, and then it's reversed when we refit in there and then across backwards. And for reference, these are the bits that locate in those recesses here, here, and here. I'm storing the door panels safely on the roof of the car. It's really easy to damage these if you put them on the concrete ground. And at this point, I'm going to raise the window, because if I start lubricating this lock, I run the risk of getting lubricant, WD, whatever I'm using, on the glass. I don't really want that. Now the door panel is off, this gives us a really good insight into the construction of this door. So you've got the side impact bar here that protects you, and obviously a steel frame to the door around the outer perimeter. Then here you've got the window regulator, the motor is right behind, and a series of cables and pulleys. Now I know that on the 450s I was forever replacing these cables because they used to snap. I've not had to do one on one of these, but this would be a good opportunity to lubricate these cables while we're here. Now moving on to the lock. It has an electrical connection, but what I've been thinking is that when this vehicle doesn't actually lock on this side, it presents in exactly the same way it would if the door was open and I tried to lock it. So I'm thinking this door lock, when this happens, actually thinks it's open rather than shut. This could be electrical, it could be a linkage. I think it's a good idea to lubricate all the linkages, and as it's not doing it currently, put it all back together and then see if there's an improvement when the next hot spell of weather comes along, if we get one this year. Everything has been cleaned because I'm me. Now back to the lock. We can clearly see this cable here is what the door handle operates via, and this mechanism here opens the door. In terms of the interior handle, this cable comes in from the top and is on the back of the lock. Now to remove this lock will involve more dismantling, primarily removal of this guide. Now I haven't got time to be pulling this whole door apart today. I'm going to lubricate what I can see. I'm thinking, having looked in here, I'm not finding some nasty corroded mess. It's more than likely an electrical issue with this door, and the very fact that it's heat sensitive would suggest that that could be an issue with the electrical side of this lock. But I'm going to lubricate what I can see on the off chance. I'm going to spray some WD-40 right inside. Then I'm going to use some white grease, which I use, which is great because it hangs around a lot longer than WD-40 and leaves a residue. I'm actually getting this right inside the lock. But having not dismantled one of these locks, I don't really know what's in there and whether I'm targeting the correct areas. But hey, let's just give it all a good squirt. I can't really get to the back of this. I'm going to squirt some in here anyway, precautionarily. But again, I don't really know where that's going or what it's doing. If this happens again, and I do have to remove all of this, I'm just going to put a new lock in there and be done with it. That is nicely protected with white grease. I'm just going to apply a little bit to these window mechanisms as well. You can't really do too much for these. The surface they actually move against is behind the cables, so it's a good idea to part the cables and give it a good squirt on the actual running surfaces. Doesn't matter how it looks, nobody sees it in here. It's more important that it's nicely lubricated. Just going to run a little bit of WD-40 down these cables as well. Just in case they're sticking. Sometimes on the 450s I used to find that water would get into the cables, and on a really cold day you'd pull the door handle open, the cable would stick, and then you wouldn't be able to shut either of the doors. It would happen on both sides. It's a nightmare. But doing something like this might just help a little bit. It's a tiny little rubber gaiter here that you can see on here that you just remove, and it'll allow access to the cable where it enters the guide. That is as much as I plan to do in there today, so let's get this door panel back on. Once you've checked around the outer perimeter that the whole door is on correctly all the way around, it's then a case of relocating these lugs in these three openings and sliding the door backwards. That hole should line up. This seal needs to be refitted. I've cleaned this because it was really gungy. To make it easier to fit this seal, I put some WD-40 in this guide to help it to slide. If this seal is fitted correctly, it should come right up to here and just meet this seal, and then this quarter light seal needs to go above. Quite often these seals move with time. I don't know how they move, but quite often you end up with a gap here which can let water down in there. Some will get in there anyway, but you don't need any more in there than you have to have. So I repositioned these further back because they had moved. Now time to refit the door handle. Now again, just to be sure, I am going to lubricate this door handle. Initially with some WD and then some white grease as well. So 2 cables to reconnect. The lower one, which is for the lock barrel. So that little metal nipple thing goes in the recess, and then that guide pushes it home into this bracket, and then this one for the handle, it's got the smaller metal nipple thing, and this goes in here, and then this engages in the plastic housing like that. Both are now connected. This is now back in. I will not pretend that that was easy. I really had to wrestle with it. Fitting this tiny little screw. The T25 that secures the door panel to the frame. Refitting the mirror and tightening the T20s. Refitting this trim. Let's refit that third mirror retaining screw. Tighten a couple of these little T20s. Snap the mirror control wires into position, like that, and refit this trim. Pushes down into place and then has the one retaining screw at the back. Another little T20. In terms of this, well, I won't be putting this mangled thing back in. Next time I'm at the Smart dealer, I'll buy one of those. I certainly won't be driving 20 something miles just for that. Done. Well, I think we can safely chalk that one up as inconclusive. But if it does play up again, I will be replacing that whole lock. I won't be mucking about with it again. Well, I hope you found the video useful. If you need to remove your door panel for whatever reason, there's not much in there, to be honest. It'll either be the window regulator, the motor, or the lock. That's about the extent of it. But I hope it was useful anyway, and I look forward to bringing you another video very soon. Thank you and goodbye.